New video, y'all. So, I finally watched Salem's Lot last night, and I wanted to share my thoughts about it. I wanted to share my thoughts, my unfiltered thoughts, and obviously, this is just my opinion. If you like the movie, then that's great. I'm glad you liked it. Take my opinion with a grain of salt, and please go see the movie for yourself and formulate your own opinion. My opinion is not law, okay? Just because, you know, how I feel about the film, that doesn't mean that's how you'll feel about the film. But with that out of the way, let me start. Okay, firstly, I'm going to start with the performances. Everyone, or at least everyone in the main cast, the characters that were seen most prominently, they did a good job with what they were given, with the material that they were given. Everybody was, in my opinion, bringing their best. The standouts amongst the cast were definitively Lewis Pullman as Ben Mears, Jordan Preston Carter as Mark Petrie, and Alfred Woodard as Dr. Cody. Bill Camp as Matt Burke and Mackenzie Lee as Susan Norton were also really good. John Benjamin Hickey as Father Callahan, he was really good. William Sadler as Parkins Gillespie, he was good. But as crazy as it sounds, those are really the only characters who have any significant amount of screen time. Everybody else is kind of a background character at best. Because we only hear from these characters maybe once in the whole movie, and then we just never hear from them again. Like, well, Mabel Wirtz really wasn't that prominent in the novel, so that's okay. But Larry Crockett was a pretty big part of the novel, and he's only really seen once. But again, this is just a single 2 hour movie, so I get why a lot of these characters didn't get any real significant screen time because the movie simply just they couldn't do it, you know? 2 hours, you can only do so much with 2 hours. Um but the main cast really picked up the slack for the lack of, other characters being in the movie. Um, Richard Straker's actor, I can't remember his name, but I know uh, he played a Greyjoy in Game of Thrones. I can't remember. I think he, I can't remember which Greyjoy he played. I know it wasn't Theon. It was, I think it was Theon's brother or something like that. But basically, yeah, he played Straker, and he did a good job really capturing the menace of Straker. Really did. I really enjoyed his portrayal of Straker. Um, Barlow, I'm not going to say too much about Barlow because if I do, it's kind of going into spoiler territory. But this version of Barlow was okay. I enjoyed it for what it was, but again, I enjoyed this version of Barlow for what it was, but would I say it blew my mind? No. No, not at all. Considering, well, like I said, go see the movie, and then, if you want, drop a like, see the movie, drop a like, or drop a like, go see the movie, and then come back here. So basically, those are the performances. I rate them a solid 8 out of 10 in terms of performance. Story wise, it was a fairly decent adaptation of the novelization of the novel. It was a fairly decent adaptation. It kind of followed the major bullet points of the Salem's Lot novel. There was a lot of stuff that was omitted, but of course it had to be omitted because, again, it was only a 2 hour movie. This leads into the pacing of the film. Uh, the pacing was kind of disjointed, in my opinion. The pacing was a little disjointed. It felt off. Um, there were references to events that obviously happened off screen that we didn't see. Um, and they just kind of jumped around a lot. You'll see what I mean if you ever watch the movie. Like, they jump around a lot, and it's like before this particular plot point really gets any development, they're immediately jumping to a completely different plot point that hasn't even, when they haven't even fleshed out the first one that they opened. So, and that leads the pacing to feel disjointed, to me at least. Um, the pacing issue, that's one of my issues with the movie, is the pacing. Didn't really like the pacing. It wasn't enough to break my immersion, but it was enough for me to notice. So go in with expecting pacing issues. Um, what else? The cinematography was really good. Really good cinematography. Some of the shots are very beautiful. I'm not going to lie. The cinematographer was really going off in the movie. Definitely. The cinematography was definitely on point. I liked it a lot. Some shots were very scenic, very beautiful, very well shot. Um, Another thing that I didn't like was the CGI. Some of the CGI made some things that were supposed to look scary just look downright goofy to me. Like, it just, like, I get that I'm supposed to be scared, that I'm supposed to be uneasy, and this is supposed to be tension filled, but at the same time, the CGI just made it look so corny that I just kind of couldn't take it seriously in some points. Um so yeah, the CGI really kind of really didn't do the movie any favors, but again, it wasn't enough to take me out of the movie. I was engaged. Um they do make some slight alterations to the source material, but it's nothing really major. If you've read the novel, then you already know how it's going to end, and they really stay true to the novel. Like, it ended the same way the novel did, just with alterations to certain characters' fates. But it ended pretty much the same way that the novel ended. So they made a fairly faithful adaptation. Um, that is really the meat and potatoes of it. Closing thoughts is, I feel like this would have been way better as a mini series instead of a movie. Instead of a 2 hour movie, they should have made this into like maybe a give or take 6 or 7 episode miniseries, with each episode maybe set at about an hour 20 minutes a piece. So that way they could have built up that they could have fleshed out more characters, really built up the world a little bit more of Salem's Lot, really built up the town, and really went through that building stage of menace and dread, because that's one of the best things about the Salem's Lot novel, is that there's a building sense of tension and dread. The story doesn't go crazy at first in the novel. At first, it's actually kind of chill. Like, there's sinister things going on, but those are mostly happening in the background. When we're dealing with Ben, Matt, Mark, they're kind of their sections of the story are kind of chill, because again, the sinister stuff is happening in the background, not really happening in the face of the characters just yet. It's around the halfway point in the story that things really start to pick up. It's a slow burn, but I feel like it's integral to really build the menace and the dread of Straker and Barlow. So that was one thing that I felt that really could have helped the movie, was, maybe if it was a 3-hour movie, they could have spent the first hour building up that menace and that dread. And then for the remaining 2 hours, they could have tackled everything that they did in the movie proper. I just would have tacked on that extra hour to really build up that menace and that dread that Straker and Barlow bring. Because the thing is, Barlow in the novel, he doesn't even appear until later in the story. Like, again, the midway point of the story. But here, we see Barlow almost immediately, and that kind of, kills any form of suspense that you may have had for, like, oh, what's he gonna look like, etc., etc. That kind of killed any form of suspense for me, you know? But again, I feel like if they had made this a mini series instead of a 2-hour movie, or hell, even if they expanded the movie's runtime by a single hour, making it 3 hours instead of 2, even that might have helped the movie get some more points from me. But as it stands now, I feel like the best I could rate Salem's Lot is a 6.5 out of 10. Slightly above average, taking into account the beautiful cinematography in shots, the acting, and the fact that they did manage to make at least like an 80% faithful adaptation of the novel. That's why I can give it a slightly above average rating. But when you take into account the disjointed pacing, the fact that the CGI just makes things that are supposed to be scary and tension-filled look outright goofy at times, and the overall, it just doesn't feel that menacing, because these characters weren't built up significantly enough. Like, they expect us to go in knowing who Barlow and Straker are, but if you're brand new to Salem's Lot and you know nothing, and the movie is your very first exposure, you're gonna be kind of left in the dark a little bit. Like, you don't know, like, Barlow and Straker are really, really, like, they are downright diabolical. But you would never know it if the movie is your only exposure to these characters, because their villainy is greatly reduced. Like, yeah, Straker and Barlow, like, yeah, Straker does messed up stuff, but in the novel, man, this man is downright diabolical in the novel. The same thing with Barlow. And you'll see why why I have an issue with Barlow. Oh, and Barlow's portrayal. That is my fourth issue with the movie, is the portrayal of Barlow. There might be slight spoilers ahead, so if you made it this far, I appreciate you. Thank you. If you don't want to be spoiled, drop a like and come back later. Spoilers in 3, 2, 1. If you're still here, I'm about to spoil something. Barlow looks more like a Nosferatu type monster than he does in the novel. In the novel, Barlow looks more human than he does monster. So it allows him to get close to the citizens of Salem's Lot and twist them over to his side and turn them, because he's able to use his hypnotism in order to tempt them with their greatest desires, etc. But here, it's much like the 1979 miniseries with David Soul, where Barlow was portrayed more, again, as a Nosferatu type monster. The 2004 Salem's Lot miniseries actually did a proper adaptation of Barlow, having him look more human than monster. But, again, those are my thoughts on the movie. I gave it a 6.5 out of 10. What do y'all think about the movie? Let me know in the comments below. Let's talk about it. Did you see the movie? Did you like it? Do you think maybe I'm being too harsh on the movie? Do you think maybe I'm, being just a little bit too harsh? Or do you think my rating is accurate and you agree with me? Let me know in the comments, and like usual, subscribe, drop a like for more content. Peace.